This is supposedly on, but it's not really working. So I'll just try to speak up and hope you can hear me. The presentation today.
You gotta be louder than that, Dick.
Yeah.
Say again?
You gotta be louder than that.
We can't hear you.
I'm not sure I can do any more than that. But Tom is going to talk about some of the numbers. I'm going to speak a little bit to what we haven't done during this transition period. Everybody goes through a dip when you have a rector search, and now we're done with that, and we're going to come back out the other end. This is really a prelude to the stewardship. And you're going to, Cindy's going to speak to that, give us a little sort of a background as to what we might expect with that. So with this, I'll turn it over to Tom, and we'll get to the numbers. Do all of you have handouts, everybody that wants them? All right.
Okay, good morning, everyone.
All right, Tom.
Got a two-pager or a two-sider for you. And the first side talks about financial forum, church financial structure. And we thought it would be a good idea to let folks know how the church accounts for the resources that it gets. The primary thing we always talk about is the church operating fund. That's how it's funded through the annual giving campaign, the stewardship drive, however you want to call that. That's the one that just pays for the lights that we're looking at, the air conditioning that we enjoy, our salaries for the rector, the other clergy and staff, and all the, what I'm going to call the nuts and bolts that kind of goes on around here day to day. The second one, and I've given you a little pre-flight there, if you will, of what the 2015 operating budget looks like. You get to look at that a little more on the second page when it's my turn again. The second part is restricted accounts. If you write a check to St. George's, or if the church gets a check from outside written to St. George's and it's designated for something, anything that's written in there, like the table, the altar guild, the flower guild, any of those array of things, if you were to write a check today for the youth group, those go into restricted accounts. They are not part of the operating budget. Restricted accounts for things like the Shrine Month retreat, the table, that's another one that we get funds from. Monies come out of those for those specific things. So if you write a check for a specific thing, we account for that separately. That is not squished into the operating budget. And that's accounted for and audited separately. The third kind of things that happen in our auditing and our accounting is our investments. Investments I've listed for you on number 3. The General Endowment Fund, that was made a part of the old rectory fund. For anybody that remembers, the church had a rectory. That kind of kicked that off, and there's been funds added to it. The Memorial Trust Fund, and I've given you an example of how some of those monies have been spent this past year. Herndon, A.W. Wallace, the Benevolent Society, the Mary Faulkner Fund is our newest fund. Mary Faulkner, when she passed away, left some of her estate to St. George's. So the vestry rankled with that as to how to set that up, and they built the Mary Faulkner Fund. Part of the funds that were given to the church were used to get the preschool up and running, because things had to happen to the plant here to make preschoolable, if you will. You knew that she had great feelings for the youth. So the vestry determined back before preschool started that would be one of the things that happened. Everybody's encouraged throughout the year, at least particularly at Easter and Christmas, to make donations to the General Endowment Fund or to the Memorial Trust Fund. And since we already talked about your restricted funds, you can always give donations to any one of these investments. All except the Herndon Memorial Trust Fund are being managed for us by the diocesan trustees of the fund, which has about $130 million worth of dollars that are being managed from all the churches within the diocese. So we have given our funds to them to manage for us, and they've done very, very well. Today's bulletin talked about that specifically, I believe, in terms of that. They go through an extensive audit every year, so that also saved us from not having to spend a lot of money on those types of funds. If there's any questions, please write them down on those little cards, and we'll work those towards the end.
Yeah, Joe, you're up next.
So I want to talk a little bit about mission, and because why are we here? Why do we need the finances that we need? Because we're on a mission. We've restructured our vestry meetings this year so that the finance report comes at the end of the meeting. That's partially practical, so we don't get bogged down in the numbers and then don't have time to talk about the mission. But it's partly just a theological thing that we put the mission first. Money follows mission, not the other way around. And so I want to talk a little bit about where we're going. But first I want to talk a little about where we've been. You all, since the spring of 2013, when your previous rector announced that he was leaving, you've been in a time of transition. And transitions are, in any organization, hard times. And we're still in a transition, but the experts say that when a new rector comes, it takes 18 to 24 months of that new rector's tenure to get through the transition period. There's a settling in time. So we're in a transition, and not surprisingly, the last 2 years have been a little tough financially, a little tougher. Although, if you look at the trend of the number of people participating by pledging, it only went down between 2013 and 2014, and went up again for 2000 and for this year. So it's been a steady upward trend for many years of more and more people participating in pledging financial support to the church. We've got, right now we're at 61% of the households are pledging. So during this time of transition, my message since I got here has been God's grace is abundant. We're going to be okay. God's going to take care of us. When I arrived, one of the first things I had to do my first week was sit down with the finance committee and look at where we were going to cut things. That was kind of an intense week to be new, and also to be thinking about having to cut things that I didn't even know about. But my message was, let's step out in faith. The vestry chose to allocate, to budget more than we had pledged, and so that was in faith that the support would come over the course of the year. So I continue to say, let's go forward in faith. So where are we headed? And people ask me all the time, so what are your plans for St. George's? What's your vision? I go back to the mission statement that's in the prayer book. The mission of the church is to restore all people to unity with God and each other in Christ. To restore all people to unity with God and each other in Christ. When I got here, what I heard over and over again was, we want to be one. We've got 4 different Eucharist services. We've got 5 services on a Sunday. We've got things going on during the week, and we want to be one. We want to be together, but we also want to retain our distinctiveness and our diversity. We don't want to be one and all be the same. And so that's a big part of our mission, is just coming together, and that's a lot of what I'm trying to do, is bring us together in ways through our prayer, through our worship, through our service, through our learning together. Our theme this year with Adult Christian Ed is, how in God's name do we live together? And we're going to kick that off with Lawrence Davies, but it's going to be a theme that carries through the whole year. How do we live together in God's name? We can kind of play with that a lot of different ways. How do we live? How do we in God's name, or how do we in God's name live, together? You can play around with it all these different ways. But how do we come together? We're going to be focused on that. When I came here, it was also clear that you all wanted to continue to grow. And so another priority is going to be continuing to welcome newcomers. I'd like to find ways that we not only welcome the people who come into the doors, but find ways to connect with the people who haven't even figured out we're here yet. To find ways to connect with our downtown community during the week and make our space available. During the summer, it's been great to have docents here and people coming in for tours. But I want people who work downtown, live downtown, to know that our church is open during the week and they can come in and just have a quiet moment. So getting that word out and continuing to be evangelists is going to be a big part of where we're going. When I arrived, it was clear that you all had done very well at managing and continuing on to the mission, but with some limited resources. Space is an issue. The fact that we have 2 full-time and 1 part-time staffers who work for nothing, but do an amazing and essential work for the church. So part of my work over the next years is to kind of help us look at how do we make that sustainable in the coming years? How do we, because we may not be blessed with volunteers who are willing to do that amount of work forever. So we need to be looking ahead. Also looking ahead, 2020, our 300th anniversary is coming up, and we have a once in a whatever 300-year opportunity to tell our story, and not just our story, but the story of how God is working in this place at this time. That's an amazing opportunity. It's also going to take resources, and it's going to take resources that we accumulate over the next 4 or 5 years leading up to that time. We can't do it all in 1 year. There's more to say, but I want to just emphasize, we're not here just to talk about money. We're here to talk about mission, where we can go together, and we'll need money to make it happen.
Good, thank you, Joe. I failed to mention at the start, for questions, please write them on these 3x5 cards, and at the end, we'll collect those and go through the questions. Oh, they do? You have another?
If anybody wants another one.
Yeah, here are the 3x5 cards up here on the desk. All right, great. Tom, I have you down again for the next segment for more detail.
I promise not to talk too much after this. We'll go to the second side of the page where it says Treasurer Update, August 30, 2015. Actually, Treasurer numbers as of the end of July, the 31st. You'll see on the left-hand column, and yes, I heard this morning there would be no spreadsheets, but there is a spreadsheet. Treasurer can't do without spreadsheets. Excel is our friend in our enemy. The left side, the left column gives you, just for perspective, what the full 2015 budget here at St. George's is. You'll see total expenses at the very bottom would say that we would have $938,211 and a faith-based deficit of $23,727. Ladies and gentlemen, we could not ever have a deficit here as long as we had a SunTrust fund. And you recall I talked about that in a couple of the annual meetings. That was one of our covenants, the SunTrust. With the loan being paid, the vestry was able to look at the fact we had a new rector, a new way to, programs were getting back in line. We ended 2014 with a surplus of $37,000 and some thousand, which you'll see on here as well. And so this year's budget assumes that we would be getting more pledges and more non-pledged revenue than we thought we would get when we first built the budget. So there is a deficit budget for this year. If you look at the next columns over, you'll see year-to-date 2015 where we are, both in revenue and expenses. And you'll see that we've ended July to the better, $29,000. That's because we had a nice pledge that was paid in July. It's supposed to be paid once a year. Again, when you make your pledges, you tell us you want to pay it quarterly, monthly, weekly, yearly. So we budget that way. So when you see the budgeted numbers here, we assumed what we would be getting in terms of pledges. And you'll see whether we are better or below the 2015 year-to-date budget. We're kind of focused on the fact that we're behind in revenue about $13,000. 19 of that is due to pledges that people said we would be getting that we haven't received as of July. And what that really means is we're still ahead because expenses have been held. Your staff has held expenses down, and we've had some expenses in terms of compensation based upon hiring and other types of things that has caused us to not spend everything that was in the budget. And I've always said stewardship's a two-sided thing. Stewardship is how much money we decide to give to the church. Stewardship also is how well the church uses the resources that it gets. So if the staff and if the commissions didn't need a particular amount of dollars, we would hope they would also be good stewards and not expend the dollars like the federal government sometimes does and says, oh my goodness, 30 September's here, I got to spend all this sometime. At any rate, if you have questions, scribble them down and we'll try to answer those. Your vestry and your finance committee looks at numbers like this every month because they're trying to be good stewards for you as well.
Thank you, Tom. I thought I would spend a minute on some of the items that have been underfunded or in some cases cut during this transition period. Now that we're through that period, we're hoping that with new members and growth that pledging will pick up and that we can begin to fund some of the things and get back to where we were in some cases 4 years ago. Outreach typically is an easy target. And so outreach, World Mission, Stop Hunger Now, which we do with the Super Bowl Sunday with the Presbyterian Cluster, has been underfunded. It always had something, but never exactly what they were asking for. Children's formation, we have not funded teacher training. We have not added new materials to the curriculum, and they've been cautious about ordering things like art supplies and other materials. Middle school mission trips need to raise funds. It may seem like every month we're doing another fundraiser, and I think we almost are. And hopefully some of these can be wound back into the budget. But for example, after this you can come over and dump the rector and a few other volunteers. Another fundraiser. What a fun one. We wanted to add a full-time youth minister to our staff, and in fact we have had one in the past. We'd like to get back to that. You know, in the search process, the fact that Joe started off as a youth minister was one of the things that we considered quite heavily. And now that we've got Joe, we want to be able to take advantage of that and begin to build that program back up again. There are many things like the audio-visual equipment, a large screen TV set, things that the youth can use up, and we're looking at redoing that top floor again. I know those plans have been drawn, but they're back out, and we'll see if we can do something with that space. Maybe even the AV equipment here ought to be Gabe mentioned earlier that we have been looking for a sound study for this room and for the partitions adjoining, so that when you pull them up, you've got a room that is more quiet than with the noise that oftentimes goes on the small side. Adult education has not been able to hire and bring in the quality of speakers that we would like because of our funds. The part-time clergy that we had 4 years ago, we'd like to get back to that, to supplement the clergy that we currently have. Running all of these services and with all of the pastoral care that's required for a church of this size, really could use another part-time clergy. And although this is more facilities, you'll notice that these lights will be changed in the not-too-distant future to go with LED lighting as opposed to incandescent. And we've gotten some grants and are in the process of changing effectively all the light bulbs that we can throughout the church, which we think will give us a good deal of savings. I'm told over about a 3.5-year period of time is the payback. So we should begin to see that. I think we need to thank our staff over this transition period, because there really has been the attitude, as Tom alluded to, if you don't have to spend it, don't. But we very much would like to get back to, if it's in the budget and it's there for your use, go ahead and spend it, because we know that that money is going to be coming in. So we want to get back to that approach on the budget. So with that, let me turn it over to Cindy to talk about our pledge campaign.
Thank you, Dick. I always love to serve the church in any way, and even when it's a challenge. This fall, we hope to have even more St. Georgians pledge financial support for 2016. And we hope to see an increase in the numbers, in participation, and the effectiveness of the pledge campaign. The St. George's Go campaign is scheduled for October 18 through November 1. That's right, just 2 short weeks. And that's not the only change that you will see in this new and different campaign. Different from what many of you may remember as having experienced at St. George's in the past. The vestry members and the Stewardship Commission and the clergy are excited about involving the entire congregation working together as a community. And just before I forget it, I don't know if they're here, but I'd just like to let you know who is on the Stewardship Commission. If you're here, please stand up. Pam Asamoah, Charles and Pam Bullock, I know they're here. Robert Courtnidge, Brian Davis, Patricia Davis, Bethany and Richard Friesner. Ben Hicks, of course, is our champion. Dick Juergens from Finance. Megan O'Connor, our vestry liaison. Ben Wakeful, and of course our rector who leads us. Thank you all. The Stewardship Commission is planning around the theme, Giving as One, or Go. The planning reflects our knowledge that we're all members of the body of Christ. And our mission is to respond to Christ's call to go and use the gifts God has given us to do the work God has called us to do. As Bishop Michael Curry, I want to paraphrase him because I heard him speak at the Episcopal Convention in Salt Lake City this summer. As Bishop Michael Curry, the presiding bishop-elect, said in his sermon, when you get the message from God to go, it means something is about to change. Just remember Noah, Abraham, Sarah, Hagar, and Isaiah. They showed us best. When you get the message, the best thing to do is go and do it. And Bishop Michael leaned out of the pulpit and gave that message to every one of us who heard him. The theme, Giving as One, also reflects our desire to know each other better as we work in unity to support our mission and ministries here at St. George's. The Stewardship Commission is developing a plan to involve every member in every pew. So watch for details and get ready to go with St. George in this exciting new fall campaign. It's an opportunity for 100% participation in pledging and in building our St. George's community.
Thank you, Susan. how it goes. Giving is not always consistent with plan. And as we have said as we go along, we base a budget on what we expect to be coming in. You can revise your pledges as you go along, and Tom wanted to spend just a minute on that.
I'll just say very quickly, your pledge is your contract with God. God is merciful. And if for some reason something happens, and we all know that things do happen, both good and bad, pledges can always be revised by just simply letting Ben Hicks, our business manager, know, and suffice it to say, that's the good part. You can increase them if it's something good.
As a practical matter, when the Finance Committee and the vestry put together a budget, we do need to know what's coming in, and that's the whole idea of the pledging. Without the pledge, it's hard to make the assumptions and know exactly what categories we can count on. So that really is the whole purpose of the pledging, and it's so important that you do pledge, because then we know what we can budget for and know what income is going to be coming in. Joe, you want to talk about the commitment for that?
Yeah, I want to say, another purpose of the pledging is just, pledging shows a commitment to our mission. And so when at the beginning of a year, we sort of look ahead and we say, I'm going to give to the church. Yes, it helps us plan, it's a practical thing, but it also shows a commitment for what we're about. And that becomes a testimony to the rest of us that, that we can go forward because we're all committed to what we're doing. And that's why we're going to try and increase participation so that we can say to each other, you know, we have this level of commitment in the congregation for the mission, for the work that we're doing. It's hard to be about your mission when you're wondering if you're going to be able to support it financially. So it's a confidence booster for the work that we do when people make that commitment.
Good, thank you. Time for questions. Cards?
So why don't we collect the cards? We can collect the cards, and then we'll just answer some of the questions. And that way, we don't have to. You don't have to be on the spot. If you had it, if you wrote down a question.
Have we been that thorough?
Good job.
Questions? No cards. Okay.
The question is our building used at capacity during the week? Is the thought to making any space available for use or rent when St. George's does not need the space? Is that what you're looking for? The building is really used quite extensively. There is a chart day by day, space by space, over in the office corridor. And you can see exactly what it is. We use the AA is in here quite frequently. There are various other groups that come in and use the space pretty much for free. And so the school does pay a certain amount of rent downstairs, but that's really more of a service to be sure that it actually happens. It's a good thought though, and I don't know that there is any space that we can rent out, for example, to another school or somebody else that would generate some revenue. Tom?
I would just like to also add that several of the groups that do use the church do make a contribution to the church. So although we don't charge them rent, so to speak, I know that the AA people, for example, contribute, and other folks do contribute as a donation.
I think that's great. And the point really isn't to generate more revenue. It sounds like St. George is really in the lead relative to a lot of churches that kind of have a dormant space sitting during the week. So just, again, environmental stewardship to me says we ought to make sure our space is being used more than Sundays and the portion that the day school uses. So it sounds like we're all over it.
Yeah, I really think we are. It's amazing when you come through here during the week to see all that goes on.
Sometimes it's amazing to try and book a space for a meeting. You really are, I mean, that's exciting. I know that never bothers me. I can meet in the closet somewhere if we need to. I love to come here and find that there are groups here meeting. And they're usually groups about the health of this community. So it's awesome.
Good. Any other questions?
Is there an outreach campaign that is going along with the Let's Try?
We have a lot of things that we're planning. We hope to have a crafting project at Steinmont, for example, and we hope to have a community that is involved under the leadership of the Stewardship Commission.
Well, say more what you mean by outreach.
Yeah, I mean, I think Thanksgiving last year is an example. I know the pledge drive is going on, but I think Megan at some point hung up a poster, but it seemed a little bit lacking for everyone, people who might not have attended meetings and things like that, to really know it was happening, to know that they were expected to turn in a card, whether there was a pledge on it or not.
I hope there will be more information about how we participate in the coming weeks, so stay tuned.
No, and I think that's, I mean, even something like that, starting in the bulletin now, just, kind of teasing people, are you ready to go, or something like that.
That's right.
Getting them kind of worked up about it ahead of
That,
time.
yes, thank you. That's what we're saying. Get ready to go.
Yeah.
St. George.
Great.
Yes.
As the outreach liaison for the vestry, the outreach commission is working on a variety of ways of raising money that have nothing to do with pledges. We're working on various organizations in the community for grants and things like that. So we're doing things to really improve the revenue for outreach that doesn't involve the church itself having funding.
That's a very good point, and we really have been quite successful, particularly in Table, at going after grant money. That's how the shed got built. In fact, we had more money than we actually needed. Once we got going on the shed, it was donated.
Yeah.
You'd say, well, I want to build, well, we'll just give it to the church.
The whole, the framing was donated, the door was donated.
So that is a wonderful.
Slate was donated. No, we bought the air conditioner.
Any other comments or questions?
If I could just, Shannon, back to your point. Last year, what the Stewardship Committee was very mindful of was not spending money to do the Stewardship Campaign. So we targeted, in addition to the bulletin, it was mostly the Facebook page, the web page. So I think it's great feedback, because I guess it's something we ought to consider as we do this year's campaign. But that was kind of a driving force, was not to spend money, which had kind of gotten us in trouble in the previous years.
Yeah, there'll be a lot more on the pledging. I know that Cindy has got a fairly good-sized group. I think like 70 people.
Coming soon.
That will be involved. That's right. So stay tuned.
And if you get a call, say yes.
Anything else?
We make one comment.
Yep, Tom.
In terms of where we are financially, in terms of the Finance Committee, all of the commissions have been asked to prepare their proposed church budget for 2016, and we're hoping to get those back from everybody by the 10th of September, so that we can then tell Cindy and her folks how much they're going to go for.
Joe?
I'd like to say thank you to the Finance Committee. Anybody on the Finance Committee is here, please stand. Our wardens, Ralph Powell, Cindy Helton, got Ron Tevitt, who else? Mary Jane O'Neill, Dick Jurgens chair. Who else? Tom Meredith, our faithful treasurer. Ben Hicks is always there. Hey, we don't know what a gift we have. I mean, maybe
Yes,
we
we
do.
do.
But
Yes,
Ben
we
Hicks,
do.
it's been phenomenal. Anyway, these folks meet every month and they pour over these numbers, and they really are about the stewardship of the funds that we have. This pie chart that we passed out, Tom pointed out to me that really it should read where the money came from. That this is sort of an as of August 26th, and where the money went. Right. So we have an opportunity. I mean, this could change in the rest of the year depending on what other money comes in and where money goes. But the finance committee is faithful and diligent about keeping track of those numbers, and I enjoy gathering with them every month because that's not my gift necessarily, but I'm learning from them. And it's a joy. There's joy in those numbers, as I try to say over and over again. And and I hope all of this money talk, you'll hear me talking more about money than I don't know, than you might hear in the average church, because I want money to be something that we're not afraid of, that we can talk about and be transparent about, and not be like having to whisper about. This is God's gifts, and we're called to use them and be good stewards of them. I really appreciate you all being here today. Yeah, Earl?
I was kind of scrambling around back here, and I may have missed it, but even if I did, it's worth restating. The fact that despite our nave renovation and the earthquake damage and the front step repair and so forth, we are debt-free, which is a very good place to be in.
We're in a great position. We are debt-free. Generous. I mean, we just got a gift this past month for $10,000 from somebody who wanted to help us pay to upgrade our HVAC system so that we can be better program how spaces are used and save energy, as well as upgrade those light bulbs. So there's always these kind of like these gifts that you don't hear about because they kind of come in under the radar. I mean, this place is incredibly generous, and so my job as rector, I feel like, is to just to highlight that and continue to encourage that, and continue to encourage it in a way so that we grow, so that we're all growing in our giving, and that we don't necessarily always rely on those big gifts, which are wonderful, but which we don't always know when or how those are going to come. So again, thank you all for coming, and I hope you all will then be willing to share with people that you know who weren't here a little bit about what you heard today. We filmed it. We're going to try and put it on the internet so that we can, the folks who weren't here can see it.
Good.
Let's close.
Don't forget to dump the rector.
Yeah. Without making a bid on a cake and coming next door to dunk the rector.
Right.
Bring money.
Bring money.
All right. Thank you all very much.
Go in peace to love and serve the Lord.
Thank you.
God.